So my name is Patrick Lawler from New York, and I go to the New York Word Church. So I had been a Christian all my life, but for me there had always been problems, especially if you look at the Old Testament, right? There's all these stories and these amazing miracles, and even the miracles that Jesus performed in the New Testament, none of these happen today, you know? Today's world is a rational world, is a skeptical world, and we need scientific proof, right? If you look, none of those miracles are really happening today. So for me, growing up in New York and being in this kind of environment, I thought that, you know, whatever the Bible was talking about, that's just like a separate history that happened, you know, because today, God's not doing those things. He's not communicating directly with people. So I thought it was just separate, you know. But it wasn't until I entered this university that I began to realize some of the problems with the Christian perspective. You know, I came here and I studied Latin and ancient Greek, and an important part of that study is philosophy and learning about the major philosophers like Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates, right? And if you look at these people, they're all remembered in history and they're all famous because they questioned people's basic assumptions about life. They questioned those assumptions. There's a famous story that Socrates was invited to dinner, and he asked the guy who invited him about justice. He said, "You believe in justice, right? Then what is justice? Can you define justice for me?" And 400 pages later, right, there wasn't an answer. We still don't know. So that was important. That was deep and profound for me, because it means that people live their lives believing in things that they don't even understand and that they can't even define, right? But if we look at other fields like medicine, science, and technology, these fields are always advancing. Why? Because people always ask questions about things. How can I make this better? Is this the best way we should be doing things, right? And it's always advancing. But I realize that the Christian perspective, right? Christians here, for the most part, they're not asking questions. They never ask. They simply believe, right? You know, they never ask, is it possible for the entire world to flood? They never ask, how exactly did Jesus resurrect? Or, you know, they never ask, so Jesus is supposed to come again, and will the world really be destroyed, right? These are questions that are just never really asked. And so for me, you know, what I also felt here was people would attack God and Christianity, and it bothered me because they attacked it with their own ignorance and making their own assumptions. But it also bothered me because I could not defend it, right? I believed in Jesus. I believed in love. I believed he was saying something important about the ideal world, that we can make it, right? That we can, by not judging each other and by turning the other cheek, right, we can make this ideal world. But I could not defend the rest of the Bible. I could not defend the rest of my religion because it just seemed like God worked differently, and he's not involved in that way in the world anymore. You know, and then I met this church, right? I met Providence. My mentor, who was a pastor, you know, he taught and he explained all the lessons to me, and he said that he learned them from his teacher, who people refer to as the teacher, right? And these lessons were amazing. Each lesson seeks to bridge our understanding of God and the Bible with a modern, relevant perspective on the world, right? And it really changed my perspective, because I realized that after the last page of Revelation, after you turn that page, God doesn't just disappear, right? He doesn't just vanish. Once we understand how God has been working throughout all history, right, we understand the way that God is even still working today, right? And it's all because the teacher was somebody who asked these questions. You know, growing up in poverty, he did not have resources or materials. You know, all he had was the Bible, and all he had was a hope in Jesus in the ideal world. And with that, he asked questions, and he prayed, and he tried to study it. You know, and eventually, what he arrived at was a truth that is possible to change the world and to change Christianity, right? An understanding about God and how he works. And so, but, you know, then I heard from my mentor that the teacher had actually been put in jail. Right? And you can look at it for yourself and look at the facts, but immediately when I heard this, I realized that it's following the same pattern that history has always gone in. Everyone who had something important to say, who had something worthwhile to say, something revolutionary to say, whether it was John Wycliffe, right, who pioneered the first translation of the English Bible, right? Or if it was Galileo, who asserted against the church that the earth is not at the center of the solar system. Or Martin Luther King advocating for civil rights, or Gandhi, or Socrates or even Jesus, right? All of these people had something to say. They were all silenced by society, and they were either imprisoned or they were killed. And I realized that here, these lessons and the teacher have something to say about the state of Christianity and have something to say about achieving the ideal world. And because of that, society had to silence that voice, had to silence it. So I realized that, through looking at these situations. And ultimately, people don't accept the truth. They don't like to hear it. It's shocking to think about, but if you look at history, and if you look at the intellectual history in the West or in the East, people don't like new ideas. They like to be comfortable. They like to believe. They don't like to ask questions. So for me, at the end of the day, more than a Christian perspective, it's more like all human beings, we all share the same reality. We all live in the same world, right? So it's not really a matter of the Christian perspective, but it's a matter of, are you somebody who wants to raise their level? Who wants to raise their level above the level of skepticism? Who wants to raise their level above the level of just blindly believing, right? So the way that he lives his life doesn't change no matter where he is, and testifies for the fact that God is real, right? God exists, he's real, and he's reaching out to you. He reaches out to you through nature, through people, and especially through the Bible. So if you want to understand more about how God's reaching out, and if you're somebody who wants to raise their level of life and understanding and learn from someone amazing, then you have come, in fact, to the right place.